Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. This is Moyna Bass Fishes. I am Jim Moyna, professional bass fisherman. In this video, we are going to be talking about the 2024 Bassmaster Open on Lake Eufaula in Oklahoma. This was stop number 5 of 9 on that trail. All right, well, this was a bittersweet tournament. I ended up 31st place, which was in the money, so that's always a good thing. Going into the tournament, before the tournament started, based on my practice, I would have gladly been accepting of a 31st place finish in the tournament. And there was a total of 195 pro anglers in this tournament. So I would have been very accepting of that outcome. But things change, recalibrations happen. And what I'm leading to is after day 1 of the tournament, I was the leader. I had the biggest, it ended up being the biggest bag of the tournament. It was a 5-fish limit for 19 pounds, 5 ounces on day 1. And when you're sitting in that spot after day 1, well, you recalibrate things. Now the goal, the goal is, I can still very much win the tournament, so that's goals totally on the table. And then of course a top 10 making the last day. That's kind of the it's kind of the, well, at least do that kind of a thing. If you can't hold on to the lead after day 2, at least stay in the top 10 so you can move on to day 3, because only the top 10 fish on day 3. And then as like a consolation prize as well, at least catch enough to make the money. And if you don't even do that, well, then it's a complete disaster of a second day. So as it turns out, day 2, and there was no guarantees. On day 1, it was a 1 here, 1 there, kind of a day. I caught 8 keepers. The average size was really strong. Of all 8, I had the 2 smallest ones out of those 8 were like 2 1/4 pounders, and then I had just 3 really good ones, like over 4 pounds, and then a couple of 3 pounders. And so the pattern I was on, I'm thinking, well, I'm not getting a ton of bites, but at least I'm getting quality bites. And even so on looking forward to day 2, I'm thinking, well, man, at least get 5 fish in the boat, and with that quality, that's going to position me in the top 10 for sure. And it's also going to keep me probably near the top, just depending on what sort of kickers I get. Well, day 2 rolls around, and I could not get bites. I had 3 bites all day. First bite came about 45 minutes into it, and that was a 15 1/4 incher, which is, it was still under 2 pounds, probably 1 3/4. The second bite came with maybe 3 hours of fishing left, and that was a spotted bass actually, and that was like 14 1/4. So 14 1/4 spotted bass. That's not, it seemed more like a male. It was not a fat one. Not that they were spawning or anything, but just male. It was just a leaner fish. So that one probably went like 1 1/4 pounds. And then my third bite, so it got to be with 30 minutes left. And now I'm thinking, I got like 3 pounds in the live well. Based on day 1, 12 pounds was the cut line for a check. So if you double that, you're looking at needing 24 pounds for a check. But realistically, I knew the way this lake is, the way it could be stingy. Fishing pressure does affect this lake. Weights usually fall off a little bit on day 2. So I'm thinking that maybe I don't need 24 pounds, but certainly probably 23 pounds. And I'm figuring I'm sitting on 22 pounds at the moment. And so this is what's going through my mind with 30 minutes left. And I'm just, and at this point, I'm like, just get one more. Just get one more. Get a check out of this tournament. Come out of this tournament with something. Don't do a complete whiff on a check, especially after leading day one. I mean, I can't stomach that. So I'm fishing, just keep moving and keep working the pattern. And literally 5 minutes left of fishing time. I get a bite, set the hook, and I'm feeling the weight of a decent fish on there. So I'm fighting him, and I reel him about halfway to the boat. Fish comes up, wallows and shakes on the surface, and the hook comes out of the fish. Oh my God. And that 5 to 6, 7 seconds period while I have that fish hooked up, I'm just thinking, oh my God, at least I'm pulling this out. At least I'm pulling this through. At least I'm going to get a check now. It comes up and stows the hook. Oh my God, I was just like, oh my God, I felt like I lost the Bassmasters Classic right there. It just hurt bad to lose that fish. So, and that was the last bite I had of the tournament. I ended up weighing 22 pounds, 7 ounces, so that, I had 19.5 day one, and the 2 fish I had on day 2 weighed 3 pounds, 2 ounces for a total of 22.7. It was a tougher bite for the field, so the average weight at the cut line did fall off. So I actually finished 31, which was a consolation prize, really, after leading on day 1. It's the first, like I said, it was a bittersweet tournament. Day 1 was sweet to no end. It's the first time I've led a tournament in many years. First time I've led a tournament after day 1. It was exciting. It was thrilling. When I laid my head on my pillow that night, it's like, hey, I'm thinking, hey, I can actually could win. I could win this tournament. And but also I knew there were no guarantees at all. There was going to be no guarantees because my practice was brutally tough. There were 5 days of practice. I had one day with 2 fish, I had another day with 1 fish, another day with 1 fish, another day with 4 fish, and the very first day I practiced, I had 7. So I knew what I was in for. It wasn't going to be easy. Just that first day of the tournament, man, everything fell into place somehow. It was just one of those days where you just pull, it all pulls together. And then on day 2, it's not that I made bad decisions. It's not that I panicked or fish panicked or, spun out. That's a term often used where if you spin out, that means you just lose your mind and you get all panicky and you start fishing them too fast, too quick, and you're not doing the right thing. None of that happened. I fished with a calm demeanor. I fished confidently, and I fished well. Any little issues I didn't let them faze me. I just kept my head on straight and fished. Now, how did I get to this point? Let's start with practice. How did I get to this pattern? And what the pattern was, okay, I was fishing the Longtown basin of Lake Eufaula. And there are multiple basins. Longtown is a basin that has water that's more clear than a lot of the other basins. And it always seems to have a decent population of bass for that lake. It's where I fished a month ago in the Toyota Series. It's where I fished last year in the MLF Invitational, where I made a check there. So that's where I fished, and and really I started practicing for this tournament when I was practicing for the Toyota Series, the MLF Toyota Series tournament last month. I was marking brush piles, did a lot of idling, marking a lot of these brush piles, and so on. So I had a lot of this stuff marked in practice. So when it came to official practice for this tournament, I fished some of those brush piles, not all of them, but I did get bit by a 5-pounder in one of them, and then I caught another couple decent fish off of not only brush piles, but there's a few rock spots too I have, and so I caught a couple of nice keepers off of some of these rock spots. So that at least gave me some confidence in that area during the official practice. But I also had, the spot where I caught 7 in practice was in a different basin, and that basin, I almost actually went to that basin, but it was the first day of practice, and there's no telling how much pressure those fish got as practice went on, considering it was 5 days of practice. And the water had dropped, because what we were experiencing, which was similar to Toyota Series, the water had come up before the Toyota Series, but was starting to fall. Same thing with this Bassmaster Open. The water had come up, but was starting to fall. And in both cases, there were good shoreline bites, whether you're fishing bushes or flooded grass. There was good shoreline bites in the first couple days of practice at both events. But after seeing what happened on the Toyota Series event, I just knew I wasn't going to spend much time fishing shallow in this tournament. And some of those fish I caught on day 1, where I caught 7, were shallow fish. So that area, I just didn't have the confidence in that area to go there. Even on day 2 of the tournament, when I was struggling, I just felt like, I don't know how many guys are going to be working that area. I don't know how the fish are going to be adjusting to the water drop. I mean, I could kind of guess, but you never know. And then not only that, it's like when you catch the biggest bag of the tournament, you just feel like you can go out the next day and run the same pattern and do it again, which that was totally my mentality. On day 2, when I only caught the 2 little ones, I just totally thought I could run out there and run the same pattern, maybe not catch 8 keepers, but get 5 anyways, and put up a good number for day 2. Well, the conditions were we did have a little bit more sunshine on day 2, so maybe that contributed a little bit to putting the fish off a little bit. But what about my early morning bite? Because I did catch. I had 3 fish the first morning. I had one of my big ones, and then two fish that I called out, but they were still keepers. Both of them were about 2 1/4 pounders. I had those 3 fish in the first hour and a half. So, what about, there was a low light period where, available, and it didn't happen. I guess I caught one. I did catch one of my 2 keepers, I guess, during the earlier morning hours, probably an hour into it or so. So I guess I got that one, but the rest of the day was mostly sunshine. Late in the day we had some partly cloudiness a little bit coming in, but still predominantly sunshine. So anyways, yeah, so I just ran with that pattern, and the whole thing was, I just felt like the very next brush pile I could pull up on could be one where I catch a 4-pounder. And I just, just being the eternal optimist with each brush pile, each next rock spot that I'd fish. I'd be like, okay, this could be the one, this could be the one. I could get maybe 2 here, who knows? That sort of thing just did not happen. And I ended up with what I did. So, but it was in practice, in that official practice period, you know, I did not tear them up. Like I said, I caught the 1 5-pounder and then a couple decent ones off a rock spot in the Longtown Basin. And I decided to go there instead of the place where I had 7 bites in practice. I went to Longtown because I had fewer, even though I had fewer bites, I had more quality. Oh, there's one bite I forgot to mention when I was in Longtown on that practice day. One of those bites was just a random 3 1/2-pounder, just swimming. It was probably like 5 or 6 feet down in 12 foot of water. It was a 12-foot depth. It was probably about 5 or 6 feet down, just swimming along. And I just happened to throw my Texas rig worm over there and swam it right by him, and he hit it, which totally had me thinking, well, I just unlocked something new, which turned out not to be the case, because from that point, and I just started doing that. I'm like, I've been struggling on a lot of these brush piles. This isn't practice now I'm talking about. I've been struggling in these brush piles. Sure, I caught the 1 5-pounder, which was on a spinnerbait, by the way, and I was spinnerbaiting a lot of these brush piles and not getting any more bites. So after like multiple hours of trying different brush piles and that without bites, and I just got done working a little group of like 3, and I'm like, I'm just gonna turn this boat out to sea and just fish some of these suspended fish. And literally, it was like my 3rd fish that I threw at where I connected on the 3 1/2-pounder. So I'm thinking, man, I've unlocked this lake. So I spent the remainder of the day till sundown, which was like another 5 hours, fishing this way, just throwing at suspended fish. And there's tons of white bass, or what they call sand bass, in that lake, plus your other miscellaneous gruel fish of carp and catfish and drum and who knows what, and crappies, who knows what else. So you got tons of just miscellaneous fish swimming around, and I'm throwing at all this stuff, trying to duplicate this 3 1/2-pounder. And seriously, for 5 hours I stayed with it, and I caught one about 9 or 10 inches long, caught multiple sand bass, couple crappie, and but that was it. So I mean, I couldn't take that pattern seriously after that. So it was kind of, I really thought I unlocked something there in practice, but it just turned out to be a misfire, or a false flag operation by that bass. All right, so gosh, what other notes can I talk about before we show you the baits I was using? Well, it turns out I did practice. Now, it seems like a lot of the top 10 guys were down on the lower basin, down by the dam. That is the impression I got from what I've heard, what I saw on the on Bassmaster and listening to them. Seems like a lot of them were down there, and the fish, and it was a tournament dominated by structure fishing, which was basically what I was doing. You know, getting off the bank, finding the points, finding the rock spots, finding the wood that was, you know, on the structure, and that seems to be how a lot of these guys did well. And a lot of them were down on that basin down by the dam, which is the most clear water. And I did fish like 2/3 or 3/4 of a practice day down in that section of the lake. That was before I was really thinking about deep structure fishing, but I fished mostly structure down there, and I caught some small ones. But I didn't really think I caught like one one or two key. It might have been one of my one keeper days, and so I really didn't get it going down there. All right, so let's talk about the baits that I use that maybe showed me a little bit of success. Now the spinnerbait. Now I never caught a spinnerbait in the tournament, or I never caught a bass on a spinnerbait in the tournament. But in practice, like on the first day of practice when I caught 7 keepers, I was using this spinnerbait here, and also I caught one off the release bank. There's a shoreline there outside of the takeoff area where a lot of release fish from tournaments end up. So I caught one in practice there with this spinnerbait, and a 5-pounder that I caught in Longtown off of a brush pile came on this spinnerbait, and I threw it some in the tournament. In fact, I seen one fish follow it out of the brush pile but not hit it. And so here's the spinnerbait. It's just a single spin, 1/2 ounce, white with some silver tinsel in there with the trailer hook. And I would throw this. This would be the first thing I'd throw into a brush pile at times. Eventually, like on day 1, I started throwing it, at the brush piles. And then I'd make 1 or 2 casts at a brush pile, then I'd set it down and throw in I'd follow it up with a worm. And this is what I'd follow it up with. Because you don't know if they're going to hit that spinnerbait, come out of the brush pile and hit that spinnerbait. And like I said, one of them didn't because I saw it. So then I'd follow it up with this Nico rigged worm right here. And when they started biting this here, and you notice I have a weed guard, there's a weed guard on there to help finesse it through the brush piles. So with that worm, I got bit by a 4.5 pounder like early into the tournament with that worm, and that was after throwing that spinnerbait in there a couple times. So that immediately told me that worm should be the player. And a few brush piles later, I hooked a keeper with that worm. It was probably like a 15, 16-inch fish. That one got away. It's the only fish I lost the first day. So I had 9 keeper bites really the first day, and that was the one fish that got away. And then my second keeper, which was a 2 1/4 pounder, came on that worm. I mean, I kind of put it in my hand at this point. And then my third keeper came on that worm. And then my fourth keeper, I actually threw that worm. It was a rock or a stump down in about, and a lot of these fish I was catching, by the way, were in like 10 to 12 to 13. That was kind of the depth zone. Maybe 9, but 10, 12, 13. So anyways, so I came to the stump, a rock. I think it was a rock. Could have been a stump. Wasn't very tall. Wasn't very high off the bottom. And I'm using my active target to locate all these brush piles and these stumps, like I mentioned, or taller rocks, whatever. Using the Lowrance active target to locate that stuff so I can pinpoint my cast right on it. So anyways, so I come to the stump, a rock, probably rock, throw this at it a couple times, and I got nothing. And it's getting later in the morning now, right? It's getting later in the morning, sun's coming up. So then I pick up this Texas rig worm. Okay. This Texas rig worm. It's not actually truly Texas rig at the moment until I put the hook in the plastic. There. So here's a Texas rig worm. I don't know, it's about 6.5 inches long. And this is a worm made by Billy Rub Baits. Go to billyrubbaits.com. And it's a worm that I've really gotten a lot of confidence in the last couple of years since he came out with it like 2 years ago. I caught some big bass in Rayburn with it. Sam Rayburn in Texas. I've caught a lot of bass in Minnesota with it. And then it caught some bass in this tournament. It caught a fish off that rock stump thing that I just mentioned. That this didn't catch it, but this did. Okay, so now I'm thinking, all right, well maybe I need to start sticking with this more. And I mean, I still will throw this some, and I ended up finally getting a fourth fish on this. Okay, and it was another big one. So now I had 2 big ones and 2 2¼ pounders. And by big, I mean like bigger than the 4.5 pounder. It was like a 4 3/4 ish, maybe 5, but you know, really good one. And that was on this again. And that was probably halfway through the day or so. So now I'm just needing one more fish. And I'm just, at this point now, I'm just fishing down new water looking for brush piles and rocks and stumps and just stuff I really hadn't scoped very well in practice. And lo and behold, you know, probably after a good hour and a half of nothing, I'm dragging this, and on my Lowrance Active Target, I see just kind of a quirky rock looking thing that stands out from the rest of the rock, and I throw it over there and I start dragging it over that thing, and the fish grabs it, and it's like a 4 pounder, maybe slightly more than 4. So now I got my limit. I can't believe what's kind of day. I cannot believe what kind of day I'm having. It's just blowing my mind. And so I got just this awesome limit that I never even dreamed was going to be possible. Well, you never know, but I certainly didn't see this coming. And I still got a couple hours left to fish. So I just kept fishing a lot of new stretches and trying to figure things out. And then finally I got to one spot towards the end of the day, probably an hour left, and I catch a fish, and I actually can make a little bit of a call. And it wasn't a huge one, but it was decent. And then about 10-15 minutes later, I catch another one off of a stump or a small brush pile, and that one was like over 3 pounds. It was like a 3 1/4, 3 1/2, and that was my weight for the day right there. That's what I ended up with. And those last couple of fish were both caught dragging this. Actually, one I just flipped it right into the brush pile. I didn't drag it through. I just flipped it in there. It hit bottom. I popped it one time and it drilled it, and the other one I was on a drag. So that was my day. So you're looking at, these are the 2 baits that actually produced the 19 pounds 7 ounce catch. Okay, 2 of the big ones came on this worm, and I ended up catching more fish on this worm, including one big one. But for whatever reason, that's what. And the thing about this Nico rig, so this is more of a bottom. You know, I'm using this thinking, okay, the fish are tight to the bottom. This is what I'm going to pick up. If I'm thinking the fish are up in the brush pile a little bit, like they can be earlier in the morning, which is what I experienced on day one, those fish were up a little bit higher in the brush pile, it seemed like. And this thing falls really slow, so it's falling really slow, and it doesn't just race right by the fish. So it gives a fish that's maybe just kind of in a semi mood to eat, just gives them an opportunity to just go grab it. So, and I think that's why that worm worked, because those fish were just wanting something slow, and they were up in the brush pile a little bit. Now let's talk about day 2. So day 2, obviously, my go-to bait to throw at every brush pile first is going to be this one, because the spinnerbait never really produced nothing the first day. So I'm thinking I'm going to use this and then use this, and that's what I did most of the day. I never caught one on this. Never caught one on the Nico rig. All 3 bites I had on day 2 were on this bait right here. They weren't big, but they were bites. Let's see, the first bite came out of, the first fish I caught came out of a brush pile where I caught a 2 1/4 pounder on day 1. And so I caught another keeper, but a smaller one. So that brush pile apparently liked to draw the smaller fish, which made sense because it wasn't on a point. It was more back in a pocket kind of a thing where, you know, it wasn't like on a typical point with brush kind of a spot. Now, that's how I caught the spotted bass, was on this. That was my second fish, and then my third bite of the day at the end of the day that came off was also on that. To note, now let's make a note of, I got another bait here, 2 more baits here to make a note of. My co-angler on day 1, he caught 1 bass, and that was on a like a morning dawn drop shot, which I actually had rigged up, and I did throw that some. I didn't catch one on it though. And then on day 2, my co-angler actually caught 2 decent fish. He caught, I think they weighed about 5.5 pounds for 2 fish, so they're nice ones, decent fish. And he caught them dragging a swimming type worm, similar to this. This is a billy rub swimming worm. You know, you got that big, like, you know, swimming type tail on there. And I never even threw this in practice, but when he caught a second one on that worm, well, I sat down and rigged this up on this rod. And I started throwing this the rest of the day, because I probably had like 3 hours left in the day at that point, maybe 2.5. So I did throw this quite a bit, thinking maybe the worm's going to make the difference, and it didn't. I couldn't. He never, after his second one, he never caught another bite on it, and then I never had a bite on this. So that was to note. And then the other thing to note was, in practice, this worm did pretty good. This is a Billy Rub's, it's kind of like just a little bit thicker, shaky head type worm, straight tail worm. I caught some fish on this in practice and had confidence in this, but when that Texas rig started working on day 1 of the tournament, it's like I had no reason to pick this up. Now I did throw this on day 2 when things were tough. You know, I just started rotating, and then I was throwing different colors. This is a green pumpkin with blue flake. On day 2, I started mixing in different colors. You know, I started throwing the same worm. I started fishing a lighter green pumpkin with blue flake. I started fishing a red bug color, a watermelon color. Just trying to mix it up and figure something else. And then eventually the third bite I had was back on this one, that color. So what else can I say? I guess fine. Okay, the last thing I guess I can say is after this tournament, I'm now 27th in the points. The goal is to be in the top 9 to qualify for the Bassmaster Elites for next year. There's 4 tournaments left. I'm 108 points behind the 9th position. So I got it. I'm really gonna have to post 4. I gotta have at least, going into this tournament, I felt like I had to post at least 2 top 10s out of the remaining 5, and then the other 3 all have to be like strong, you know, money finishes for sure. So it was kind of disappointing not to hold on to a top 10 finish for this tournament. There's some disappointment there. I mean, like I said, going into the tournament after practice, before the tournament started, you know, it would have been, you know, 31 would have been, okay, yeah, that's cool, I'll take it. But things, you know, you recalibrate things when you have a really good first day. You know, after day 1, you're thinking, you know, the win is on your mind. You think you got something going. You know, there's no guarantees in any lake, especially Lake Eufaula, Oklahoma. No guarantees. So I knew what I was up against. But I also kept my mind in the game. I kept my mind positive, which was, this is really important because I melted down a month ago on this same lake. Okay, it was a meltdown, soul-breaking meltdown, beat down of my essence, of who I was, what kind of a fisherman I was. It was, and the reason why it wasn't just that tournament, it was the culmination of multiple tournaments through the year of losing key fish, losing big fish, which again happened at that Toyota Series a month ago, and that was rock bottom. So I left that tournament thinking about things, thinking about how I just can't be such a sourpuss when I lose fish. How I got, how I have to just remain strong and remain positive, think about the good things that are happening, focus on the right things, focus on the good things, and just keep my head in the game despite the adversity, despite what's thrown at me out of random chance. Just, just take the situation at hand and like, okay, this is what I'm dealt. What can I do to pull the best possible fishing day I can out of this? All right. And that's a kind of mentality that I've had much of my career, and somehow at various times throughout my career, I've kind of gotten away from that mentality. So let's get back to it. And it started with the Champions Tour tournament a couple weeks ago on Lake Okoboji in Iowa. I went there, posted a decent finish, money finish, and so now we got 2 money finishes in a row. So that is a good thing. And just because you have the right attitude doesn't mean you're going to catch them every tournament. Okay, there's more to it than that, but that is a very important ingredient, because you can still go out and catch a decent bag if you have a piss poor attitude, but the chances are less likely. And you can still go out and have a great attitude like I did on day 2 of this last tournament and just not catch them. But having that right attitude is going to carry you through. You're just going to come through with more fish in the end. Okay, let's put it that way. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and that's about it. Over.